In this video, we'll create a responsive Lightbox image gallery. First, we'll lay out the HTML and then our CSS, adding the media queries last to give the Lightbox its responsiveness. Okay guys, so let's take a look at the layout of this Lightbox image gallery or portfolio that we're going to be creating here with HTML and CSS. So when we hover over the images, we're going to see that they change in color a little bit, and then when we click on one, an image is going to pop up where we can navigate through the images using these previous and next buttons. You'll also notice that the image that we click on doesn't have to be the same one that pops up when we click on it. So later in the video, I'm going to show you how you can add your own images in here, as well as a image or portfolio description that displays right underneath the images. So I'm excited to share this with you guys because I think this is the absolute easiest way and quickest for you to create a responsive Lightbox gallery or portfolio for your website, and we're going to do it fairly quickly here. So as we size the website down, it's going to go from 3 columns down to 2 columns when we get to about an iPad or tablet width, and then when we get down to a cell phone width, it's going to go from the 2 columns to a single column for mobile devices. So we're going to do that in the CSS later, adding media queries where it tells it to shift the way the website displays twice as we size it up and down, and you'll notice that the Lightbox is also going to display just fine on mobile devices or however wide or narrow you want the website to display. So let's go ahead and size it back up here, and then we can get started in just a second. Okay, so all we're going to need to get started here are some simple starter files that I'm including in the description of this video. So if you need to, go ahead and just pause the video for a moment, and you can click through to my website where you can download these starter files, and then we'll go over them in a little bit of detail here before we get started with our HTML and CSS. So once you download the starter files, go ahead and just open up index.html and style.css in your text editor. So the text editor that I'm using here is a program that's called Sublime Text. I believe Sublime Text 3 is out now. Another really great program is called Brackets that a lot of people swear by as their text editor, so I would recommend that one also. Alright, so as you can see here, index.html has some information included for us, but style.css does not. We're going to get to that in just a moment. The one other thing that you want to do before we get started is just open up index.html in your web browser so we can see the project as we're putting it together. So the web browser that I'm using is Google Chrome. You can use whatever you like, but that's typically what I use for the tutorials here. So starting at the top of the document, we have the HTML tag itself that's going to span the whole document, and underneath the language tag we have the head section. So the head section we're not going to see actually display on the website. This is where we reference the files and meta name tags for the web browser to tell it how we want the website to display. So for example, we have the style.css sheet referenced underneath the title of the website, which will actually display in the tab at the top of the web browser itself. And then we have some jQuery script sources referenced. So a link and a script source, followed by the style sheet here for the actual Lightbox plugin that we're referencing. So you'll see that that's in the CSS folder. So it's css/lightbox.min.css, and let's go ahead and just add the jQuery file reference for the Lightbox plugin. So we'll want to have this at the bottom of the body section, and if you add more content to your website, or if you add this to an existing website, just make sure you keep this script source reference at the bottom of the website. So what you want to write is script src for source, and then an equals in quotations js / because we're in the JS folder, lightbox ++ jQuery.min.js. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a little bit of space for ourselves inside of the body section of the website, and then we can get started with our first tag here. So the first tag that we're going to do, and just remember to, as I said, have index.html open in your web browser. Again, I'm using Google Chrome, so just to show you, I have the blank document open right here. And the first tag that we're going to add is just going to be a wrapper, so we can give the website a max width. So when we flex the website up and down, we're going to find that the gallery will stay centered inside of the website. So later in the style.css document, we're going to tell it to stay centered in the CSS, but we need a div, or in this case a div ID, so we can style it later to center the website. So we'll just call that div ID wrapper. Make sure you open and close the div tag. And then what we'll do next is let's section off the different rows for the gallery. So we're going to have 3 different rows. So I'm just going to create a comment or note here in HTML with the angled brackets on either side, the exclamation point. So anything that's inside of this comment or note will not display on the actual website. So you can write whatever you want here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to copy and paste this a couple times so we can section off our different gallery rows that we're going to be creating. So you'll see that later in this we're going to be doing a little bit of copying pasting, because once we get started and sort of lay out the first images for the gallery, the rest is going to be kind of the same, other than changing the actual images, links, and descriptions for each particular image in the gallery. Okay, so let's get started with the first image here that has the rocket design dark layout in it. So we're going to section these off with the section tag, and then we're going to give them a class. And since it's 3 different rows, we'll just give them 1/3 class names. So section class 1/3, and then inside of the section class, let's get started laying out the actual gallery info. So we're going to start with a link that will surround the rest of the information here. So just write a class, and this will be called example-image-link. Okay, and then the next is an ID. So this is going to be called lightbox-img for image. And then href, which is the actual URL or image location in this case. So for right now, I'm going to put a hashtag in there. It's not going to send us anywhere yet, so we can copy and paste this information for the other images that we'll be adding. So then write data-lightbox equals, and then in quotations, example-set, and then write data-title equals, and we're not going to add the title yet, which is what we see as the image description. So for right now, you can just add a hashtag or $, and then write, or inside of that, we'll have the actual image source. So it basically, inside of the link tag, the A tag, we're going to have an image tag. So just close the beginning of the A tag, and then an img class, we'll call that example-image, and then for source later that will be the actual image that we're clicking on in the Lightbox. So you can just keep the hashtag in there for source for right now, and then you can also add, if you want, the alt and title tags. Okay, and then just close out the link, and we're not going to see anything display just yet for this. So if we go back and refresh, we're just going to see kind of like an image here and then the hashtag for the link. And then when we click on it, nothing's going to come up. It's just going to keep going in circles forever until we give it something to link to. So before we add an image link, well, let's go ahead and just copy and paste this a couple times, at least for the first row, so we don't have to write all of the same information out time and time again. So go ahead and copy and paste that a couple times, and then if you like, you can do it for the second and third rows also. So there's going to be 9 different 1/3 sections all together. So take a second just to make sure that you have all this information correct, and that you have 3 for each different row that we're going to be laying out here. Alright, so now let's go ahead and add some information in here in what we started, starting with the image that we're going to be linking to when it pops up. So the first image in the gallery is that dark rocket design template from my website image. So for the first hashtag that we added, the href, we'll want to add the big image that displays when we click on it. So that's going to be complete-rd.png. Okay, so there it is right there. Alright, so we'll reference that with the image folder also, so make sure you write img/ and then complete-rd.png. Okay, and then for the data title, you can just add a description in there, whatever you want to display when the image pops up. So in this example that I'm showing you, it says portfolio project details. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of reference the rocket design dark template version. Okay, and then we have our next source. So if we refresh right now, the one that we click on won't display, but the one that pops up as well as the title down here does display. So let's go ahead and just add this image that we hover over and click on now. So we'll just want to reference the image folder, so write img/, and then the file name is 900-644-rd.png, and then for the alt and title, you can just write what you want again. So I'm going to make sure that I put the wrong image URL in here so we can see the alt text display. Oh, wait a second. That's actually a right image, but not the one that we want. So there's the correct one. Okay, so now it's functioning, but let's check out where you're going to see the alt text, alternative text, and the title display. So first, if I put a bad URL in here for the image, there's the alternative text that displays. If for whatever reason the web browser can't display the image, it will display that text there. Okay, so now let's just correct the image again and put the title in, and I'll show you where the title will display. So I'll just write Rocket Design Dark Template once more. And then it'll still display if we hover over the alt text also, in addition to the image. So there you have the title text that kind of pops up when you hover over it. Okay, and then if we refresh and we actually have the image display, we hover over it, there you see the alternative text once more. Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to reference the Rocket Design light template. So this is going to be complete-rd-light.png. So complete-rd-light.png. And then for the source image that we're actually seeing in the gallery before we click on it, that's img/900-644-rd-light.png. Okay, so now if we refresh, we're going to see that the complete front page of the Rocket Design light template will display as the Lightbox pop-up when we click on the image there. So rather than have you guys sit through me basically filling in the blanks where all of the hashtags are throughout the entire HTML document for the Lightbox gallery here, what I'm going to do is turn the video off for a second and come back with all of the images added here as you see them in the finished version, and then we'll get to the CSS. Okay guys, so I'm back in a flash, and you can go ahead and just pause the video for row 1, 2, and 3 to copy this information if you want it to appear just as it does on my screen on your own. Go ahead and just fill in the blanks for each 1/3 section, and then we can get started with the CSS. So if you missed that and you need to pause it, just track back a couple of seconds and you can match your code up to what I have on the screen here, so we're on the same page. So at this point, as you can see, I have all of the images displaying here, and when we click on them, we'll have their respective Lightbox images pop up. So it's time to move over to the style.css document and get started with our first CSS style. So the first thing that we're going to style is the HTML document itself with what's called a reset style. So just do an asterisk and then open and close the swirly brackets, and we're going to do away with any inherent margin and padding that the web browser wants to push onto our HTML document. So if we go ahead and just write margin 0 and padding 0, when we refresh the page, you'll see that the image is going to line up all the way up to the side of the browser screen and to the top there. So we did away with a little bit of margin or padding that we're seeing. It's probably margin though. So the next thing that we're going to style is going to be the div ID wrapper that we see here. So as I said towards the beginning of the video, when we flex the website to a pretty wide width, we're going to see that the Lightbox gallery is going to display and stay centered on the screen. So it's nested within the wrapper, and all we have to do is give it a max width. So we're going to give it a max width of 1200 pixels, and then we'll tell it margin 0 auto, which is going to center the wrapper in the page. Okay, so next is our images. So let me just show you real quick where we're referencing the images here in the HTML. So here is our image class, and we're just going to reference all of them at once with the same CSS styling here, or CSS selector. So just write display block, and then we'll give the images a max width of 100% after that. So max width 100%. Okay, and then we'll give it a height and a width of auto. Alright, so before I save this, let me just show you why we're going to give it a max width of 100%. So if we flex the website down right now, you'll see that the image is still going to display at 100% even when the website itself is narrower than the image. So with the max width 100%, it's always going to display at a maximum width of 100% and size down with the actual screen width. Alright, so now we can drop down to the next tag. So let's reference the 1/3 class. Actually, the images are inside of the 1/3 class, so probably we could have done this first, but that's alright. So that's the 1/3 section, so we have 9 of them here. So let's give it a width of 29%. So as you know, if you divide 100 by 3, it's 33.33, but we need to leave room for the margin in between the sections, so that's why we have it at 29 rather than 33.3. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that margin, and then it's going to space out our images here pretty nicely. So give it a margin of 2% all around, and then refresh, and there we have it spaced out quite nicely. Okay, so it's pretty close to the original here. I think there's a little bit of margin, negative margin at the bottom here. I don't remember why I did this originally, but I think that will correct it so it matches the original exactly. So you can add this, or you can leave it without adding the margin bottom. So it's margin bottom negative 4 pixels, and then if we refresh, we should be able to tell the difference between the two if we go back and forth until we size it down and realize that one is not changing as we size it down. So that's what we'll get to next. Actually, before we do our media queries, there's one other thing. That's the simple hover effect. So just write img:hover, and then just give it an opacity of 0.8. So basically what that's doing is it's making it 20% see-through. So as you can see, when we hover over it, we kind of have a little bit of a white background showing up to it. So it's going to show 20% of that white background and 0.8 or 80% of the actual image. And you can add more styling to that with the hovering if you like. That's up to you. So now let's start with the media queries. And in the media queries, we're going to style the 1/3 sections and change the width. So write media screen and in parentheses max width 768 pixels as the first, and then reference the 1/3 class. So just remember when you're doing media queries that you need the open and close brackets for the actual media screen and width query there, as well as the selector for the individual sections or classes. So we're going to change the width from 29% to 48%, and then a margin of 1% on either side. So now when we flex it down at 768 pixels, it's going to go from the 3 column sections to the 2 columns, and it's going to remain 2 columns no matter how narrow the website gets. So the width that it's flexing down to right now isn't quite as narrow as a phone, so we'll definitely want to size it down once more adding another media query. So you can just copy this if you want, or you can write it out. And then we're going to change the max width for the query and the width of the actual section. So the width of the section, you can leave the margin 1%, but the width is 98%. And then for the max width, let's do 480 pixels. Okay, so now if we flex the website, let's just go up to full width and then size it down. We're going to see it change twice with the media queries at the 768 and 480 pixel marks. Okay, so there we go, from the 2 columns down to the 1 column for the cell phones such as the iPhone. And when we click on the image, we're still going to see the Lightbox and the title for the individual images display at the cell phone width. Okay guys, so that does it for this tutorial. Thanks so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.